From kings of Europe to chaos in New York, Paris Saint-Germain had it all until they didn't. They dominated the Ligue 1, conquered Europe, and then collapsed on the biggest stage. But this wasn't just one bad day, it was a warning. Today we break down the tactical flaws, emotional cracks, and storm clouds PSG will face next season. Paris Saint-Germain have made pressing their trademark, a suffocating, high-octane style designed to overwhelm opponents, win the ball high, and keep teams trapped in their own half. It's what they've done to elite sides all season long, until it was done to them. In the Club World Cup final, Chelsea didn't just beat PSG, they mirrored their intensity, outpressed them, and completely flipped the tactical narrative. For the first time in months, PSG were the hunted, not the hunters. Luis Enrique's side looked shocked. Their midfielders were rushed, their defenders rattled, their passing options closed in a heartbeat. What PSG typically uses to control games was now being used to destroy them. Here's the issue: PSG's pressing game is systemically strong, but vulnerable against teams that can match their energy and decision-making speed. And that's exactly what Chelsea did. They didn't just press, they pressed with purpose, in layers. Enzo Maresca's setup was clever not just in shape, but in psychology. Chelsea invited PSG to play out, baited the center backs, and then triggered press traps the moment midfielders received the ball. PSG fell right into it, and it worked again and again. Cole Palmer, João Pedro, and Pedro Neto didn't just chase, they anticipated. It was like PSG were playing against a mirror, but the reflection was faster. Let this sink in. Chelsea finished 4th in the Premier League last season. This is not Liverpool, not Arsenal, yet they tactically dismantled the kings of Europe using their own blueprint. For all of PSG's dominance, this season this match exposed a deep vulnerability, one the Premier League has been circling for months. If they don't adapt, this tactical weakness will not just return, it will define their downfall. Tactical flaws might explain how PSG lost the Club World Cup final, but fatigue? That explains why they couldn't even compete. 65 games, 1 relentless season, 3 domestic trophies, 1 Champions League title, and for the final push, Luis Enrique gambled. He used almost the exact same lineup throughout the Club World Cup. No rotation, no rest, no recharge. It worked until it didn't. Against Chelsea, PSG looked spent, physically flat, mentally dulled, unable to recover, react, or resist. Their legs were heavy, their minds even heavier. While Chelsea rotated, while Chelsea conserved, PSG rode their starters into the ground. By the final, the difference in freshness was visible in every sprint, every duel, every transition. One team still had energy, the other was running on fumes. And this wasn't just a one-match issue, it's a structural risk. PSG's depth may be expensive, but it's not trusted. When it mattered most, Enrique looked at his bench and stuck with the same names. Again, why does a squad with one of the biggest wage bills in world football look this overused? Why do the backups barely feature in decisive games? Why does every big match look like a test of endurance for the same 11 players? The result? A final that looked like a mismatch, not because PSG lacked talent, but because they lacked legs. The truth is, fatigue doesn't ask how good you are, it just catches up, and it caught up to PSG at the worst possible time. Next season will bring even more games, more trophies to chase, and more clubs hungry to expose every inch of weakness. If PSG don't trust their depth, if they keep grinding their stars into the ground, then fatigue won't just be a one-time issue, it'll be a pattern, and patterns become problems. Big clubs lose players, great teams survive it, champions adapt. But in the Club World Cup final, when PSG missed just 2 vital positions, the whole system became too vulnerable. No William Pacho, no proper defensive midfielder, one disaster. The result? A midfield overrun, a defense disorganized, a team that couldn't hold its shape, couldn't protect its zones, and couldn't respond. You might say William Pacho's absence wasn't felt in the game against Real Madrid, but truth be told, if Real Madrid had done a few things differently, the result could have been very different. Let's talk specifics. Without Pacho, PSG lost their only real physical enforcer at the back. His red card in the quarterfinal was reckless, but it exposed a deeper issue. No one could replace his profile. Marquinhos is brilliant on the ball, but not the aggressive stopper. Lucas Beraldo reads the game well, but doesn't cover wide space like Pacho. And when those spaces opened up, Chelsea exploited them ruthlessly. Palmer and João Pedro constantly received between the lines, drawing midfielders out, dragging defenders in, and pulling PSG out of their structure. In midfield, the issue was worse. No pure defensive midfielder meant Vitinha was forced to play deeper than usual. The same Vitinha who's built to create create, not destroy. That imbalance left massive gaps between the lines. Chelsea didn't just notice this, they built their entire game plan around it. Enzo harassed, Caicedo covered, Palmer floated. They knew PSG couldn't adjust mid-game because they had no tools to adjust with. This is the uncomfortable truth. PSG are rich in stars, but shallow in structure. Once one pillar falls, the whole house shakes. No backup for Vitinha, no secondary enforcer in the back line, no third option at right back or defensive midfield. This wasn't just bad luck, it was poor planning. When you're built for domination, you rarely plan for survival, and PSG weren't ready to survive without their starters. If PSG want to maintain dominance next season, they don't just need marquee signings. They need role players, fighters, anchors, depth, because if Cole Palmer can dismantle your shape just because Vitinha isn't 100%, then you're not building a dynasty, you're building a house of cards. Paris Saint-Germain conquered Europe this season. Champions League winners, Ligue 1 champions, French Cup winners. But if you look closely, there's one recurring wound, one tactical riddle they never quite solved: the Premier League problem. On paper, they got past Liverpool, Aston Villa, and Arsenal. But on the pitch, those wins were anything but comfortable. And every tie, PSG were pushed to their tactical limits. Pressed, pressure, pinned. Liverpool took them to penalties. Why? Because PSG couldn't play through their central press. Mac Allister and Gravenberch suffocated Vitinha. Enrique's midfield triangle was outnumbered and outpaced. The only escape? Long balls to Kvaratskhelia. Predictable, repetitive, risky. Aston Villa, that was pure survival. PSG led the tie, yes, but for more than 30 minutes in the second leg, they were battered, high line exposed, fullbacks trapped. McGinn and Rashford ran riot. Then came Arsenal, a tactical chess match. But even then, PSG looked vulnerable in transitions. Odegaard floated in pockets behind the midfield. Saka broke lines. Martinelli pinned defenders. PSG escaped with clinical finishing, not tactical control. Every time PSG face a Premier League side, the same three issues emerge. They struggle against high-pressing units. They can't sustain controlled possession under physical pressure. They over-rely on verticality and speed, especially Kvaratskhelia and Dembele to bail them out. Let's talk about the real tactical blind spot. PSG don't have an orthodox defensive midfielder, not one. When under pressure, you need a player who can shield the backline, dictate tempo, and offer vertical passing. PSG have none that do all three, and Chelsea, through Cole Palmer, exploited that gap mercilessly. On paper, PSG have depth, but when tested, the replacements either lack experience or tactical fit. No backup for Vitinha, no clear replacement for Hakimi's overlapping threat. Luis Enrique had to stick with the same 11 for almost the entire tournament, not by choice, but because the alternatives weren't trusted. That's not rotation, that's risk. This is the paradox of modern PSG. They've built a Ferrari in the front, but the engine room is fragile and the chassis is thin. Here's the key: Premier League teams don't just press hard, they press smart, they prepare, they bait, they force you where they want you. And PSG, for all their quality, are still playing like a team that expects opponents to collapse under pressure, not set traps of their own. Luis Enrique is a possession romantic. His teams dominate the ball, move patiently, and use width to stretch teams apart. It works beautifully against most of Europe, but Premier League teams, they invite possession. They wait for the second pass, then they press in waves. And that's where the war is being lost in the system clash. Enrique's idealism versus Premier League pragmatism. Control versus chaos. Flow versus fire. PSG's next opponent? Another English team, Tottenham. Thomas Frank's Spurs, a team that presses with manic intensity, builds quickly, and thrives in chaotic moments. If PSG haven't solved this yet, the nightmare might not be over. The Premier League problem isn't a one-off. It's a tactical pattern, a systemic flaw. PSG can dominate La Liga sides, overpower German setups, outclass Serie A units. But English football, it keeps pushing them into chaos. And if PSG wants to evolve from champions to a dynasty, this problem can no longer be ignored. In football, managers are the generals. They command, they protect, they remain calm even when the battle spirals. But in the dying moments of PSG's season in the Club World Cup final, Luis Enrique did something unthinkable. He snapped, he didn't argue, he didn't protest, he laid hands on an opposition player. A moment of pure emotion completely out of character. But the consequences? Massive. Reports suggest that FIFA could issue a global touchline ban, not limited to the Club World Cup. That means Enrique might not be allowed on the sidelines when PSG PSG begin their title defense next season in France, in Europe, or anywhere under FIFA's umbrella. Paulo Fonseca was banned from domestic games for a far lesser offense. Now, FIFA's disciplinary panel ironically praised for having nothing to do, this tournament will be forced into action. This wasn't an isolated moment. PSG's tournament was littered with disciplinary chaos. 3 red cards, multiple altercations, boiling tempers. From the quarterfinal to the final whistle, it felt like a team slowly losing control of its emotions. William Pacho's reckless lunge on Goretzka earned a 2-game suspension. Hernandez's needless elbow against Guerrero right in front of the ref. And then the most childish of all, Joao Neves pulling Cucurella's hair. When your players lose discipline, your tactics lose meaning, and PSG's system built on calm control, layered buildup, and possession dominance completely collapses when forced into emotional firefighting. So why does this keep happening? Why does a club with the best talent in Europe crumble under pressure? It's not about tactics, it's about identity. PSG were once the underdogs, now they're the hunted, and yet they haven't evolved mentally. They want to dominate, but not to be challenged. They expect respect, but struggle to give it in defeat. You can fix a formation, you can buy a new midfielder, but you can't buy resilience. You can't train emotional maturity overnight. And right now, PSG, for all their trophies, showing the emotional discipline of a team not ready for sustained dominance. Discipline reflects leadership, and leadership flows from the top. When the manager is pushing players literally, it's no wonder the team unravels under pressure. Luis Enrique is one of football's most respected minds, a European champion with Spain, a treble winner with Barcelona, and this season, he led PSG to the holy grail of the Champions League. But this outburst wasn't just a bad look, it was a red flag. Behind the composed figure was a man under pressure from the boardroom, from the media, from the weight of expectations. And when Chelsea dismantled his team on the biggest stage, that pressure erupted. So now, PSG face a new kind of crisis, not just on the field, but on the bench. If the manager is banned, who leads the preseason? Who sets the tone for a team still struggling with emotional control? And deeper still, what does it say about a dressing room where temper flares are frequent and self-control collapses in every big loss? From tactical vulnerability to emotional breakdowns, from squad fatigue to over-reliance on a fragile core, PSG may be the reigning kings of Europe, but beneath the silverware lies a blueprint full of cracks. Next season, they won't just be tested by opposition tactics, they'll be tested by their own identity. If they don't adapt tactically, mentally, structurally, the fall could be as dramatic as the rise. The world is watching, and so are we. Subscribe because when PSG returns, so will we.